When World War I kicked off, massive naval battles erupted across the globe. But today, we're talking about something different. We're zeroing in on the incredible story of one single German warship that watched its entire squadron get wiped out and somehow managed to escape, becoming the most hunted ship in the ocean. This is the story of the SMS Dresden. And here she is, the SMS Dresden. This picture shows her in her prime, a light cruiser for the German Imperial Navy. You can just see it, right? Sleek, modern, and absolutely built for speed. She was the best naval tech of her day. But this calm, peaceful image, well, it gives no hint of the wild and unbelievable journey that was waiting just over the horizon. All right, so let's jump right into the action. Picture this. It's December 8th, 1914. We're way down in the South Atlantic, off the coast of the Falkland Islands. The German East Asia Squadron, a really powerful naval force that had just handed the British Royal Navy its first loss in over 100 years, gets caught, and a superior British force just systematically takes them apart. 5 German cruisers sailed into that fight. 4 of them were sent straight to the bottom of the sea. But just one ship, through this insane combination of pure speed, a whole lot of luck, and sheer grit, managed to slip right through the British net and just vanish. That ship, of course, was the Dresden. So you have to be asking, how in the world did this one ship pull that off? Well, to really get it, we need to rewind a bit, back to her very beginning. And it turns out her story was, well, let's just say it was anything but smooth sailing from the start. So the Dresden was what you'd call a modern light cruiser. She was specifically designed for long-range missions. You can see from this drawing, she was built for 2 things, speed and endurance. The idea was for her to be a scout for the main fleet or to go off on her own and raid enemy merchant ships. But her design had one crucial piece of tech that would literally save her life later on. And here are the specs. Now look closely at that propulsion system, Parsons steam turbines. This is the key. Most of the other ships in her squadron had older, less efficient engines, but these turbines, they gave the Dresden a serious speed advantage, a top speed of 24 knots. Just file that detail away. You're going to see why it's so important in a little bit. So even with her fancy, modern design, the Dresden had a really unlucky start. During her sea trials, she actually collided with and sank a Swedish ship. And then she had a major accident with those brand new turbines. But after a ton of repairs, she had this really interesting career before the war, doing everything from a diplomatic trip to New York City to evacuating the ousted Mexican dictator Victoriano Huerta to Jamaica. Then, in July of 1914, everything changed. Just as she was supposed to head back to Germany, World War I exploded onto the scene, trapping the Dresden in the Americas. In an instant, her mission flipped from diplomacy to all-out war. She became a commerce raider. You can see her first moves on this map. Her job was to wreck British shipping, and that purple line shows her hunting grounds in the South Atlantic. After she sank a few ships, brand new orders came in. Get around Cape Horn and link up with Admiral Maximilian von Spey's famous East Asia Squadron over in the Pacific. And by joining up with von Spey's squadron, the Dresden was about to walk right into one of the most shocking naval battles of the early war. It was a victory for the Germans so stunning, it would completely humiliate the all-powerful Royal Navy. So on November 1st, 1914, off the coast of Coronel, Chile, von Spey's squadron practically ran headfirst into a British cruiser squadron. And the Germans had this huge advantage. The sun was setting behind them, which perfectly silhouetted the British ships against the bright sky, making them perfect targets. So let's break down the matchup. You see armored cruiser and light cruiser. Basically, think of an armored cruiser as a big, heavy hitter for fighting on the high seas. A light cruiser, like the Dresden, was smaller, faster, more of a scout. But here's the real kicker. The German armored cruisers were way more modern, their crews were some of the best gunners in the world, and they just flat out outgunned the British ships. And the result was an absolute disaster for the British. The Dresden took on the British light cruiser Glasgow and chased off another ship. But meanwhile, the German big guns, the Scharnhorst and Gneisenau, just demolished the British armored cruisers Good Hope and Monmouth. Both ships went down with every single sailor, including the British admiral. And the Dresden, she didn't get a single scratch. Unbelievable. That victory at Coronel sent shockwaves all the way back to London. I mean, the British Admiralty was furious, and they were embarrassed. So they responded with overwhelming force. They sent two of their newest, most powerful warships, battlecruisers, the fastest and most heavily armed ships on the planet, with one very simple order: find Von Spee and destroy him. Now look at this matchup. I mean, come on, this isn't even a fair fight. The British brought out the battle cruisers. This was a whole new type of warship. Imagine the massive guns of a battleship, but with the speed of a cruiser. They were designed for one thing, and one thing only: to hunt down and kill armored cruisers just like the ones in the German squadron. The hunters had officially become the hunted. And on December 8th, Von Spee, who had no idea this new threat was even there, decided to raid the British base at the Falkland Islands. As his ships got closer, they saw the distinctive tripod masts of the battlecruisers in the harbor. The whole German squadron was caught in a trap. What followed was a desperate, high-speed chase across the South Atlantic. There was nowhere to run. The British battlecruisers, with their speed and long-range guns, just picked off Von Spee's ships one by one. The other British cruisers hunted down and sank the Nuremberg and the Leipzig. By the end of the day, the German East Asia Squadron was just gone. It had completely ceased to exist. All of its ships were at the bottom of the ocean, except for the Dresden. So, how did she do it? Right, remember those turbine engines we talked about? Pushed to their absolute breaking point. They gave the Dresden just enough extra speed to outrun the ships chasing her. Then a lucky rain squall came along and hid her from view, and she slipped away, disappearing into the maze-like channels of Tierra del Fuego at the tip of South America. And what came next was this amazing 3-month ordeal. The Dresden basically became a ghost ship, a fugitive hiding out in these desolate islands. For months, her crew was just working around the clock to keep her totally worn-out engines running, playing this deadly game of cat and mouse with the British Navy. The hunt finally came to a head on March 8th, in a brutal 5-hour-long chase. The Dresden just barely got away from a British cruiser, but the effort completely burned through her last bits of coal and basically wrecked her engines for good. And that was it. The chase was over. She was battered, her engines were shot, she had no coal left. The Dresden had absolutely nowhere else to run. Her captain, Ludica, made the only decision he could. He took his crippled ship to Cumberland Bay, which is now known as Robinson Crusoe Island, in neutral Chilean waters. His plan was just to have the ship and his crew interned, basically held by Chile until the war was over. You can see in this photo, he even raised a white flag to show he wasn't looking for a fight. But the British weren't taking any chances. On March 14, 1915, 2 British cruisers showed up, including the HMS Glasgow, Dresden's old rival from the Battle of Coronel. They completely ignored that Chile was a neutral country, they ignored the white flag, and they closed in on the helpless ship. When a German officer went to protest, the British captain's response was blunt. The British just opened fire, with his ship getting torn to pieces, totally unable to fight back or escape. Captain Ludica gave his final order: scuttle the ship. He was not going to let the Dresden be captured. So at 10:45 a.m., explosive charges went off in the bow, and the lone survivor of the East Asia Squadron slipped beneath the waves on her own terms. But even though the ship was lost, her story lived on. Most of her crew actually survived and were interned in Chile. And artifacts from the wreck, like the ship's bell that was brought up in 2006, they act as this physical link to an incredible story of survival, defiance, and a desperate escape against truly impossible odds. The controversial way the Dresden met her end leaves us with this really big question. You know, the laws of war, the rules about neutrality, they were all designed to put some kind of limit on conflict. But the British decision to fire on a helpless ship in neutral waters, it kind of suggests that when you're in a total war for survival, those rules can start to look like obstacles. And it raises a question that we still see in conflicts today. When nations are locked in a fight for their very existence, what happens to the rules that are supposed to contain the chaos?